I'm here, I guess you know, Chase, he was trying to not be sick Sunday, but he was a little bit, wasn't he? He was trying hard not to be, and but anyway, he gave up and notified me that it didn't get better. It got a little worse. He was running fever, and so he's sort of having to fight it a few days longer than I think he thought. So anyway, we wish the best to him, and hopefully he'll be back in form by Sunday. But usually in my experience in the past, whenever I got sick enough to have a fever, it took an extra 2 or 3 days to get over something like this. I do have a handout or two. I might give one or two of you that just come in, if you like. I've been, whenever I've filled in, I've been teaching in the book of Ecclesiastes. There seems to be no reason not to. It kind of helps me to kind of know where to start and where to end. And so therefore, the last time I filled in, I taught from Ecclesiastes. It was involving chapter 4 and part of chapter 5. So my plan is to, there is some handouts on the back if you want to pick up one. So I'll continue with that, picking up in Ecclesiastes chapter 5, verse 10 tonight, and we'll go till the bell rings. I do appreciate your attendance. I was expecting it to be a little bit light tonight. There may be people that are afraid to get out on a rainy night or afraid to drive, but hopefully we'll be fine. I usually start out by pointing out some points in the last lesson. It's been a while, though. It was back in December, I think, when I taught last time. But in that one, in chapter 4 and early part of chapter 5, of course, Solomon writing Ecclesiastes, there is some handouts on the back if you want to pick up one. Solomon, I believe it was Chase I heard mention, maybe in some of his lessons on the Kings right lately, I'm not sure. Solomon is one that I've heard at least others say as well. It may be one that's better to do as he says, not what he does, because we know that Solomon, in his reign as king, tend to not always make the best decisions. But in that last lesson, just a few points to sort of catch us up with this lesson, he pointed out that it was better a poor and wise youth than an old king who was foolish and who knew everything and would not listen to anyone. We talked about that in the last session about this. Sometimes we know people who know so much they can't listen to anyone else because they already know. But he had an example there of a young poor person that wound up in prison. He came out of prison. He became king. But the part of it is people don't always continue favoring the same. People are fickle. People make a change. But better is the poor wise youth than an old king who knows everything. The young king who became king, he lost favor with the people. And every time I talk about losing favor with the people, I always point out the fact that Joseph, he was so well favored in the land of Egypt. He saved Egypt, second only to the king. He really ran the place, didn't he? That's really what it amounted to. He found such favor. But the book of Genesis ends and the book of Exodus starts, and 8 verses later, it talks about, that's pretty, I know it's more years than that, but that's pretty brief. The Bible's pretty brief, isn't it? 8 verses later, it's talking about a king who doesn't know Joseph, isn't it? But the people can change. People can favor a king for a while, and they can change. All right, Solomon follows that with a lot of a statement he makes quite a bit. Surely all is vanity and grasping for the wind. Then he made a point about walking prudently when you go into the house of God. I guess he's talking about visiting, going there for sacrifice, visiting the temple. Walk prudently. Sometimes, like in my lesson, I put a parenthesis around it. Be careful what you say, particularly. Don't be rash with your mouth. Is the point, isn't it? He said, let your words be few. Then he makes the point that a fool's voice is known by his many words. Then there was a caution on making a vow to God, something that was rather common. Pay what you have vowed. If you make a promise, keep that promise, keep that vow. Of course, we talked about some examples of that. The one that always comes to your mind as a person that kept that vow was Hannah in her prayer for a son, wasn't it? And then, of course, Jephthah, who made the rash vow that we've talked about in times past. I don't think I talked about it, but we kind of ended the class pretty much after that. But you know, when you became Christian, when you made the confession of faith and became a Christian, doesn't that sort of imply that you're vowing to become a Christian and stay a Christian? It's pretty close, isn't it? You've got a plan to do it, you know, and if you fall away, if you do, it's a little bit, at least a little bit similar to breaking that vow, I think. The Lord's Supper is a little bit the same way. We have I guess a duty or commitment to, and we do a lot, at least in our prayers, pray that we might partake in a way. Well, it's a kind of a call to keep these things in our mind and do it. Then we start out with this week's lesson. We started talking about when the bell rang last time. He who loves silver will not be satisfied with silver, nor he who loves abundance with increase. This also is vanity. Of course, Solomon is the richest man on earth, isn't he? He had all wealth. He had, sometimes it seems like, though, that he's envious of the common working person. He's got all the wealth. And he said, whoever loves silver will not be satisfied with silver. I'm not sure there's a lot of this thing. I guess in our day and time, everybody's kind of rich a lot of the time. He who loves silver. But isn't it talking about a little bit more than that? There's got to be if I asked everybody in here, do you like money? Yeah, you do, don't you? Let's admit it. You know, everybody. So, if you got enough, well, maybe not. Want some more. But I think this isn't just talking about money either, because it said on that verse, he who loves silver will not be satisfied with silver, nor he who loves abundance with increase. I think about other things. You know, most everybody here grew up in a rural community, a farming community. If you make 2 bales an acre, don't you want to make 3 next year? Yeah, you do, don't you? We're not. The point is, we're not satisfied. We want to. Do you make enough money at your work? No, I'd like to have more. You know what Dave Ramsey always said. You know, how you doing? Better than I deserve. Most of us are like that, aren't we? Better than we deserve. But I kind of think on this, see what you think, that it involves just a little more than wanting more. It's to the point of being covetous, isn't it? There's got to be a line there somewhere where you cross over from wanting to gain to being on the covetous side of it. I was talking to somebody several years ago before I retired, about the job. Now, he had the job as traffic manager. He always wanted that job, but later on, he really didn't so much, So, but Dave, you wanted that job. And he said, I coveted that job. But, it's something he wants really. Covetous is a little more than just wanting more. It's to a little higher rank than that. We all know what covetous is, but I kind of looked it up in the dictionary too, since I'm talking about it. Marked by an inordinate desire for wealth or possession for another's possessions. That I'm talking about crossing the line a little bit, an inordinate desire. So I think that's more what we're talking about here, this covetous of wanting more and hoarding it. Any thoughts you have on that? I thought this next verse was interesting. Verse 11, when goods increase, they increase who eat them. When goods increase, I guess there's more of a meaning to that. Of course, I think that's true, isn't it? When goods increase, they increase who eat them. On all these lottery things that I see on TV, and somebody won the lottery and so many millions or $1 billion or something, they kind of keep it a secret, don't they? For a while, I guess. Everybody wants some of it, share it with me, give it to me, help me. So as goods increase, they increase who eat them. So what profit have the owner except to see them with their own eyes? But I think this has more meaning than just it's a little stronger, I think, than there's just more people sitting around the dinner table, although that might be true too. But it has to do with when goods increase, when you have more, you buy more, because if you have more, you can maybe have a bigger house or an extra house or a bigger car. And so, in other words, when goods increase, there's a lot of other expenses that comes from that as well. You have more, you keep up more, you have to fix more. That's the way people are. I read quite a bit of business news and stuff, and I read about people who make what I call a tremendous salary, but they say they live paycheck to paycheck. Well, the more you have, the more you spend, I guess. And that's what he's saying here. Goods increase, they increase who eat them. You have to support more. I remember a preacher telling a story one time. It's like he was making an illustration on that, I think. He said that he bought his kids a swing set, and he got out the instructions to put that thing together. And I've done that before too. They have lots of nuts and bolts and screws, and that's a swing set's a lot more complicated than you think. I know, especially one with those things that swing back and forth and all. But anyway, he was saying when he got through with that, he was reading his instructions, and it's like once a month he's supposed to go out and check all these screws to make sure they're still tight. In other words, he's saying, out of this possession I bought, now for the rest of my life, I'm supposed to go out there and check all this stuff because, my kid, it may fall apart and my kid get hurt. So with possessions comes all these things that you've got to maintain. That's the point. When goods increase, they increase who eat them. So what have the profit? What have the owners except to see them with their eyes? All right. I read one, I think it was in a commentary I was using or something when I was studying for this one time. He made a comment there was kind of come across kind of funny, I guess. It said, it was talking about with goods comes the increase. It said it requires more to feed a fat man than a lean one, you know. But the more you have, the more it costs, okay? Verse 12, the sleep of laboring man is sweet, whether he eats little or much, but the abundance of the rich will not permit him to sleep. There's the verse I sort of get that Solomon seems a little envious of a peaceful sleep of a laboring person, you know. Those who have much sometimes have to spend too much time managing all these things that they possess, you know, is his point. Keeping up with things, doing it, so he envies the person who works harder and maybe sleeps better. Do you sleep better if you work a little harder?
It's hard work you do.
Yeah, I like it. Sometimes it helps. Sometimes it helps. I did work pretty good the other day trimming bushes, but this winter I didn't work enough. Anyway, verse 13. I'll bring verse 13 and 14 together. There is a severe evil which I have seen under the sun, riches kept for their owner to his hurt. But those riches perish through misfortune. When he begets a son, there is nothing in his hand. So, he's talking about, I guess, someone who, I think he's talking about maybe on the covetous side. He's keeping riches says to his own hurt because misfortune comes. See, if he doesn't spend it himself, if he hoards it, at least he's planning on his son inheriting it, isn't he? But those riches perish through misfortune. When he begets the son, there's nothing for the son to inherit. So that's what he says, you know, there's an evil. There's an evil I've seen under the sun. It's saved up, it's kept up. You can't carry it with you, can you? You know, misfortune, you know, there's nothing left for his heirs, even though he's saved up and kept up. When he begets a son, there's nothing in his hand. That happened, I'm sure, in Bible times when Solomon wrote this. They would have that problem. You hear of it today too, don't you? Misfortune can happen quick. What do you think the question, what kind of misfortune do you mostly kind of dread these days in time? Any thoughts? What? Health. We'll see some points on this a little later on. Health, you're not guaranteed. In that case, your heirs might get it, and the point he's making here, it wouldn't be nothing left even for the heir, but if you had heirs under the health situation, that's one, isn't it? You read these stories all the time or hear these stories all the time about so many scams today, don't you? Boy, I was reading one a week or two ago, somebody's bank account, they looked in there and zip, 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 money just draining away. That's kind of scary, isn't it? You know, misfortunes can happen. It can be a bad business deal. It can be a lot of different things. I'll probably talk a little. It can occur in 100 different ways, I guess. You know, unwise investments. It can leave the heir with nothing, or the person with nothing. And I think there's a little more I want to talk about when we hit the top of chapter 6, because some of this continues on there with that. You know, he's talking about somebody stripped of his property. In that day and time, I would think a lot of it had to do with theft or plunderers or things of that things of that nature that could rid a person of the property he's got. I put a verse on the screen. If you would, help me fill this in. Do not lay up for yourself, you know this verse, don't you? We've heard it too many times. Do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth where moth and rust destroy and where thieves break through and steal. In that Bible time, I would think this would be, one of the things that would come up quite a bit. So don't lay it up on earth where these things happen. All right, verse 15. As he came from his mother's womb, naked shall he return, to go as he came, and he shall take nothing from his labor, which he may carry away in his hand. We realize that, don't we? We can't take anything with us. We're always hearing the joke about you never saw a funeral coach with a U-Haul trailer pulling your goods behind. I've thought too of all of these things in foreign country, like King Tut's tomb and stuff. They show his stuff, what was buried with him at the time. Apparently it was still there when they went years later. Nobody carried it with them. Nobody used it anymore. The next verse I put on my screen, we've seen this and quite often too. We brought nothing into this world, and we can't carry nothing out. Having food and clothing, and with these we shall be content. All right, verse 16. And this is also a severe evil. Just exactly as he came, so shall he go. And what profit has he who has labored for the wind? We must, whether we're rich or whatever, we leave behind us all the wealth that is. Everybody is subject to death, aren't they? Everybody is subject to death. All human beings are subject to death. And all of this will be gone. Verse 17, all his days he also eats in darkness, and he has much sorrow and sickness and anger. Talking about someone who is so concerned, so covetous, a miser or something like this, continually worrying about his wealth, I think. And he creates a lot of anxiety over it, I think, is what he's bringing out here. Verse 18, and here's what I have seen. It is good and fitting for one to eat and drink and to enjoy the good of all his labor, in which he toils under the sun all the days of his life, which God gives him, for it is his heritage. As for every man to whom God hath given riches and wealth, and given him power to eat of it, to receive his heritage, and rejoice in his labor. This is the gift of God. Pretty good advice probably from Solomon, who knew in this case, didn't he? What God has blessed you with, eat and drink and enjoy the fruit of your labor. I thought about this. Some countries, some people have, some have more, some have less. But the Lord's Prayer, I guess, we're so much better off than people in that day. But the Lord's, teaching men to pray, give us this day our daily bread. Solomon is saying the people who have daily bread when this life is the realm of the dead is for everyone, isn't it? The goods can't go with us. We sometimes study about the rich man in the Bible, and Sharon mentioned that a while ago. We're not guaranteed that we'll have a long life or that we'll have the power to eat of it, and things can happen to it. Verse 20, for he will not dwell unduly on the days of his lives, because God keeps him busy with the joy of his heart. With that, I'll go to chapter 6, I think. This chapter, it continues, I guess, a thought with a pessimism. It continues some of that, and I put on my screen, for chapter 6. It's dealing a little more, and I mentioned that a little more with misfortunes that happen. He brings that up again to deal a little more. There is an evil which I have seen under the sun, and it is common among men. A man to whom God has given riches and wealth and honor, so that he lacks nothing for himself of all he desires, yet God does not give him power to eat of it, but a foreigner consumes it. This is vanity and an evil affliction. I can't help but think, a foreigner, he stored it up, but he doesn't have the power. In this case, he's mentioning, we mentioned a little bit ago, there could be 100 reasons to why there's misfortune. In this case, he mentions one particularly, that a foreigner consumes it. I think, for the last year, we watch the news every day, and we see something on the people in Ukraine every day. Don't you know some of those people in the Ukraine were working hard, they were doing well, they had houses, they had farms, they had grain stored up that a foreigner came in, and the Russians came in and unloaded their grain bins and hauled them off to sell for themselves. That's a modern day thought, isn't it? It can happen. It is happening now. So a lot of them, I don't know, I suppose they had pretty well-to-do people in some cases too, but a lot of them have lost all of that. They didn't receive the power to eat of it. So there can be a lot of different things. Untimely death we've mentioned, accident, murder, invading army, thief, dishonest businessman. There's all kinds of, between the computer and banking scams today, there's just a lot of reasons that this can happen to us today just as well. I thought, too, the prime lesson I wanted to talk about from the book of Judges that I put in my notes about it. And in the book of Judges, I'm going to read a verse ahead of this. So it was, when Israel had sown, Midianites would come up, also Amalekites, and the people of the east would come up against them. And then then they would encamp against them and destroy the produce of the earth as far as Gaza, and leave no sustenance for Israel, neither sheep, nor ox, nor donkey. For they would come up with their livestock and their tents, coming in as numerous as locusts, both they and their camels, and were without number, and they would enter the land to destroy it. You can feel sorry for them about that, couldn't you? Of course, in this case, I would say for sure the Lord allowed it to happen for a reason in this case, but this is what happened. Can't you just imagine planting your crops, having your wheat fields or barley fields or whatever that they growing? You've worked all summer long. It's harvest time, and the Midianites and the Amalekites come in like locusts, and they just turn their animals right into your fields to feed. They come in like locusts, they devour it all. When they leave, they not only carry their animals and yours as well and go. Isn't that what really happened in this case? An invading army can do it, and they did in Bible times. So we're not always guaranteed these things. The Lord, Jesus told a parable, and I put some of that on the screen. So he said, I will do this. I'll pull down my barns and build greater, and there I will store my crops and my goods. And I will say to my soul, you have many goods laid up for many years. Take your ease, eat, drink, and be merry. But God said to him, fool, this night your soul will be required of you. Then who will these things be which you've provided? Things can change. And change quick, by the way. I saw a verse, it's been maybe a few years back. I was studying, teaching in the Old Testament in here, and I saw a verse that really, it seems so disastrous. I don't know, it's something I couldn't really get out of my mind when I think about these things. And that verse comes from Haggai 1. Haggai 1, of course, this was after the people were carried into captivity for 70 years. And when they came out, they were to go to the land of, go back and rebuild Jerusalem, rebuild the temple. And in this case, they went back and they did some work on the temple, but it wasn't long before they kind of slacked up on that and started, building their, beautifying and building their own personal houses, and kind of were leaving the temple unfinished. And the Lord wasn't pleased with that. He gave them some punishment because of it. And this verse, Haggai 1:6, said, you have sown much and bring in little. You eat, but you do not have enough. You drink, but you're not filled with drink. You clothe yourselves, but no one is warm. And he who earns wages to put in a bag with holes. That's what really stuck to me. Wouldn't you? Can you just imagine yourself working in the hot sun all the day like they did, or wherever else, and you got your money and you put it in your sack or your back pocket, and when you got home you found out it's been falling out all the way home. He said, you earn a lot, you earn wages, but you're putting it in a bag with holes. It's losing out. And in this case particularly, he mentions again, it's people that he's given them some punishment because they have slacked up on their work for the temple. They're not doing what they're supposed to do. Verse 3, if a man begets 100 children and lives many years, so that the days of his years are many, but his soul is not satisfied with goodness, or indeed he has no burial, I say that a stillborn child is better than he. If he begets 100 children, that's a lot of children, isn't it? But I suppose if you thought about somebody like Solomon who had, I'm not saying he did, I don't read about that many kids of Solomon that I know. But anyway, if you had 700 wives and 300 concubines, 100 children is very well within reason, isn't it? But if you had all that, and you're not set, they put a lot of value on a lot of their children, a lot of kids, didn't they? Put a lot of value. If you had all that, but you didn't have, and your soul wasn't satisfied, if you were consumed with, I guess, the covetousness part of it, if you're consumed with all of this or managing that, or if you're in that situation, or if you don't have a burial, I'm talking about an honorable, decent burial. If you don't have that, that was particularly important in that day and time. A proper burial, it didn't happen all the time, but a proper burial. And I might want to finish some of this the next time. I don't know. I got a minute or so. I may want to stop there and talk about that. Let me look at the questions a little bit. You might have had difficulty due to the versions. He who loves abundance will not be satisfied with increase. The sleep of a laboring man is sweet. Solomon said that riches can perish through misfortune. I know some of your versions got something else there. Solomon said, there is evil I have seen under the sun. A wealthy man lacks nothing, yet God does not give him the power to eat of it. Another example, a man has many children and lives long, but he has no burial. That's where we got to right now. Solomon speaks of, if you got the rest of these, Solomon speaks of things that happen to wealth, such as a foreigner. Some of your versions may say stranger. Solomon said, all the labor of man is for his mouth. Later on, you work to have, you're hungry, you got to eat. You need to work if you need to eat, don't you? Solomon's questions, what more has the wise man than the fool? Better is the sight of the eyes than the wandering of desire. I wouldn't get to that tonight. There's some more I want to talk about. Man cannot contend with him at capital N, with God, who is mightier than he is. Back to the verse I was on. I'll go just a little bit, and I think the bell there. We'll stop there.
There we go. If you would grab a songbook and turn to 255. 255 will be our song of invitation. This evening, I want to turn over to the book of Jude. Jude 22, where it says, and have mercy on those who doubt. Save others by snatching them out of the fire. To others show mercy with fear, hating even the garment stained by the flesh. I look at this passage, and I think a lot about the times in my life when things have gotten hard. I was raised in a very good home. Both of my parents were very faithful, and I was very blessed in my life to have a very good foundation. That when things came, I was not shaken in my faith. But I'm also aware that I may be an exception, that my life may have not been the same if my parents and those in my life had not taught me so well. There are those in life who do find themselves in doubt. It's very often seen that those who lose loved ones, who lose things in their life, they find themselves in a time of doubt. We often will say, why did God allow this to happen? Or why God, why this, why that? And we look to God and when they have these doubts. And what we're being told here is that when we see those who are in doubt, to have mercy on them. I think at times it's very easy for us to say, well, you believed in God just last week. Why do you not now? It's very easy for us to dismiss doubt. I was told once that doubt can be a healthy thing. Doubt is not trying to blatantly disobey God. It's not trying to run from God or to hate God in those moments. To doubt God is to begin to ask questions. I really do believe that asking questions is almost always good. When we begin to ask things, especially about God and His Word, it opens up opportunities for us to learn more about Him. To learn about the things that He has put into this world, the things of His will, and it becomes very easy for us to learn more about Him. But us as Christians who are faithful, who have not had these doubts, it becomes an opportunity for us to either help those or to really push them from those moments. To question their own doubts and to just say, don't doubt. Just believe in God. These last few weeks in our own class, we've been talking about the arguments for God's existence. Not because I believe any of our youth need to have those answers in the way that they were being put, but because one day we will all at some point be exposed to those in our lives who don't believe in God, and they're going to need more than just, I believe in God because I believe in God. That's a wonderful thing for us to have, but that won't work for some. And so when we see those in doubt, when we see those who are having a hard time in life and with just the idea of God, I think it's our responsibility as Christians to take a moment, and it says here to have mercy, to show them mercy with fear and bring them in, snatching them out of the fire. It's very urgent language. It says go to them and snatch them, bring them in quickly, and have mercy upon them. Look at their doubts, look at their fears, look at the hard times they're having, and work with them to show them where their doubts may be answered. And there are those in this room tonight who may have doubts, who may be in one of these hard times in life where God just doesn't seem right for some reason. great thing about being at a church like this is that we can take time and have this mercy and to and work on those doubts. And so if there's anybody here this evening who is in need, who is in doubt, this is a great time to now come and to talk about those things. So if there's anybody here who has any need, please come now as we sing.
I am resolved no longer to linger, drawn by the world's delight. Things that are higher, things that are nobler, these have allured my sight. I will hasten to Him, hasten so glad and free.
Really have too much to just keep in mind that those who are sick and those who are in need at this time. It seems as if sickness is kind of going back around through the church. So keep those who are sick in your prayers, and give them a call, check in on those who need it, and then Robert Earl. Yes. Robert Earl Walker, his funeral was today, and so keep that family in our prayers. But as far as one thing for all those who are going to CYC, this Sunday morning after AM service, we're going to meet up here for a few minutes just to iron out the last few details. It'll be a fast meeting. So if we don't have anything else, we'll close out in a word of prayer. Dear Father in heaven, we come to you now at this time, thankful for this place, for this opportunity to be here, to learn more about your word and to sing praise to your name. Lord, we pray now that as we have heard these things from your word, that we'll take them home and make them a part of our lives more than just in this place. Lord, we ask that you'll be with all those who are not here this evening for a few reasons, and Lord, we ask that with all those who are sick, you'll place your healing hand upon them. Lord, we ask all these things in your Son's name. Amen.